Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Creators Connect series. My name is Luca, but you can call me that camera guy. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for your love and support. I truly appreciate it. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing if you like this video. In today's episode of the show, we're joined by an artist, videographer, photographer, and writer. His name is Tyler, and he runs a company called TVC, which stands for the growth concept. What the growth concept does is videography and photography for almost everything. Automobile companies, properties, weddings, portraiture, lifestyle. Talk about being a jack of all trades, right? So Tyler talks about some of the things he wish people understood about who he is as a photographer and a videographer. Some things he wish he could stop explaining and just people understood, once and for all. Tyler also tells us what he would tell the younger version of himself if he had an opportunity to go back in time and give the younger version of himself some advice. So just sit back, relax, let's connect with Tyler. Thank you so much, Tyler, once again, for being here and taking time out of your schedule to sit down and have this conversation. I actually saw one of your interviews, I think I told you, and it was really interesting to just hear the way you think and your perspective. And I looked into your work and bumped into your company, and I was like, really cool to get this guy onto the show. And here we are today. Our first question is going to be on your Instagram bio. It says artist, and I know that you're a photographer, videographer, a writer. You do a lot of different things, but you refuse, in a sense, through that to be identified as just the one thing,
right? Either
a photographer or videographer. I mean, is that intentional? Did you choose artist on your bio intentional, and like, why is that? Like, is there anyone you identify with more, in terms of all the creative spaces you're in?
Yeah, I wish Instagram had, as far as labels are concerned, I wish they had a like creative label, and that's it. Because I try not to get too deep into the labels, but I do a lot more than just photography, and I also just didn't want to be like stuck with that. So I also do that. I mean, as we talk more, kind of getting into like all the different types of things that I shoot. I just don't like being stuck in a box or just within one word. So that's kind of why I did artist, because it kind of encompasses everything as a whole. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I was going through your website as well, and you mentioned something about not being able to identify with just like one specific type of photography, and that you tried a lot of different things. I know a lot of people have said, I've heard a lot of people say, you can't be a jack of all trades. Pick one thing and be the best you can at it.
Right.
I mean, how have you been able to be a jack of all trades? Like, how did you manage to navigate that?
Man, that's one of those things. I'm like a really deep thinker too, but I think it's one of those things that you just have to do. Within all of the different aspects of photography, and then anything else you want to do under that creative label, right? I feel like a lot of people that shoot photography also might like poetry, or they might like videography. Multiple things. So you kind of got to just jump in and just test out a lot of things, or just shooting what you like or doing what you love to do. And that's kind of how I look at it. Nothing too technical. There's no like magic formula, but it's just don't let your audience kind of box you in. I think that's one big thing that we see now within social media. You start shooting, you start off with landscapes or something like that. You blow up or you go viral, which is what everyone's trying to do nowadays. And then your audience just expects you to shoot landscapes. If you don't want to shoot landscapes anymore, if you want to jump into, automotive photography, then do it. And just see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something very interesting about everybody wants to go viral. And I do feel like there's a lot of competition in the creative space.
Yeah.
And there's a lot less, helping one another, like having each other's backs. Every other creative is trying to be bigger than every other creative. And have you seen that? Have you experienced that kind of energy in the creative community?
Yeah.
How have you dealt with it?
Man, yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I mean, I've experienced it. I feel like we feel it every day. I think it's in the back of every creative's mind of like, okay, when I send this or when I make this post, how can I get it to reach as many people as possible? That's one thing. That's cool. Share your art. But whenever it affects your creative process to where, you feel like you have to rush your work or you're posting something that's unfinished just because it's Wednesday and it meets an algorithm, that's not art anymore. I value, quality over quantity. It sounds cliche, but when it comes to like your creative process and your work, if you're going to share it, drop it when it's finished. Being a creative is like a very vulnerable process anyway. But to answer your question about how I've kind of handled it, just through creating things that you might ask me, I'll share like Edit and Chill is one of the things that I kind of created within the growth concept. I know we'll get to that later, but it's focused on collaboration and creating engaging events, prior to the pandemic, unfortunately, but we hosted a lot of different events focused on collaboration and talking about how we can get together and create, dope stuff. So.
Wow. We'll definitely talk about Edit and Chill and the growth concept in a little bit. But I think going back a couple of years, did you see yourself in this position, when you were younger? Is this always what you wanted to do? Did you see yourself owning a business, at this point? Like, was this always the dream, or something changed and something happened over the course of the years?
It was something that I always, as far as photography and, shooting, it was something I'd always done. I didn't always have a camera. That's something you may have heard in the interview. I wasn't able to
Yes, I did.
afford it till I got my first refund check in college. And that was like the later end of college. I think I only got like one. So I think I shot on like iPhone, cell phone, just taking landscape photos. I really loved architecture. As far as getting into the business aspect of it, I didn't necessarily plan for it long term. I just saw, through shooting and like different affirmations of people saying, hey, look, I'll pay you to do this. Then I was like, okay, I've got a little process here. Let me start building something out. And I kind of ran with it that way. But aside from that, I don't necessarily, I'm a little different. I'm not necessarily trying to scale my photography per se. I use it to kind of learn more about whatever I want. So I'm very interested in, as we grow up, it's like, all right, it's all about this multiple streams of income and all these different things. So I shoot real estate, but through doing that, I learned more about, the people that own these properties that I'm shooting. I just love cars, but it's like the people that are buying these cars, I shoot luxury and exotic automotives. So these cars cost as much as the house or the real estate that I'm shooting. So,
it's crazy.
I love just, kind of networking and talking to people. So through that, I'm just talking like, hey, what, not in a, nosy way, but it's like, hey, what are the things that you do, or what type of things do you, think about or read, all while providing value to that person. I never want to like leech off of anyone, but that's kind of how I use my craft strategically, honestly, to this point.
Yeah. It sounds like you've almost answered my next question, which is, what is the most valuable or the most important, the thing you enjoy the most about the entire creative process or the entire creative spaces that you find yourself in?
Yeah, I'd say definitely that from like my last answer, just being able to learn from
other people,
anyone. And I know that sounds super basic, but so more recently, this year has definitely been a year. I'll call it a year of growth. So I think now, one of my favorite things that's helped me out a lot is actually being able to turn my pain into art, quite frankly. So that's what I've been doing heavy this year. And I think that's my favorite part. Like, I think, this might be a question later on, but I found myself through, obviously when I started shooting, I loved it. I knew my, the little camera that I had, I knew it like front and back, and I was free. And then you get people asking you, okay, I'll pay you to do this and that. And it's great. I just thought, it's photography. I'm still doing what I love, but, eventually just segues into just paid shoots. not necessarily those intentional like passion projects or whatever you want to shoot, you know, turning whatever into art. So I kind of found myself lost at one point, up until, you know, this year, towards like, look, I got to turn some of this stuff into art. What can I do to really express myself?
Yeah.
So being able to kind of fall back into that, it's really helped me breathe a lot better.
Wow. I was actually going to ask that. That I mean, it's been one heck of a year, right?
Yeah.
It's been a lot of things going on. A lot of things we didn't plan for, didn't see coming. And I know there's been in a lot of people's lives a lot of negatives, and just like in focusing on the year. It's like everybody wants to leave 2019. They want to be, 2020. They want to be done with it. Can't wait for 2021. But I mean, there's definitely been a lot of positives in other people's lives as well.
Yeah.
You know, I know for me, one is this YouTube channel in itself would have never started if I had never found myself in a lockdown position where my life was slowed down like a lot in terms of going to school and always being busy and always putting aside making content and making videos.
Right.
I got to pace myself and start this YouTube channel and actually see this thing through. So my question is there anything like that for you this year creatively? That you're like, I mean, as much as the year has been a year, is there any positives that you can take out of it creatively?
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's awesome that you've kind of like found yourself through that. I'm super proud of you with that, man.
Thanks.
Wishing you the best of luck. I mean, the same for me. It's just been, I think this year's forced a lot of people to like sit down and really like look at themselves, like whether they wanted to or not. And again, I'm super like I write, so forgive me for being like deep, but
it's okay.
It's ironic that it's 2020, because I do think it really brought the vision to like a lot of people. You know, it's like no excuses to not see anything. That's for like everybody in America, from, you know, racial injustice all the way down to like your personal, you know, good habits or bad habits. Like it's sat you down and you've had to look at it in the mirror. So I'll say the same for me. I've kind of found myself a lot more. Gone through a few things this year too, for once. So it's allowed me to really tap back into my art to kind of balance me out and find out. That's what I like about this photography too. I can kind of manipulate different things and send a message that way. Yeah. So yeah, I can say that. I can't necessarily, I'll keep you updated personally. I can't necessarily share what I've got coming out soon, but yeah, I've definitely, for this year, I've turned a lot of pain into art as of recently.
Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch and see what's coming up, and I'm excited for that. Okay, so looking at where you are now and everything that you've gone through creatively as an individual, if you could go back to beginner Tyler, the Tyler that just got that first camera, you know, what advice would you give him going into this creative journey? Be like, yo, Tyler, watch out for this, or, you know, be mindful of this.
Man, I literally just say so many things.
It's a lot, right? It's not just one thing.
It's going to sound very, very simple, but I just tell them just to keep shooting. Don't worry about literally anything else, you know. So like I dropped my whole refund check on the camera for a reason. I liked it. I was passionate about it. Just shoot, man. You know what I'm saying? Keep exploring.
Don't stop shooting.
Exactly. And then, you know, I'm trying to say this in a different perspective. Like, you really don't have to worry about really anything. Like, kind of let your passion, your creativity guide you. Don't worry about gear. Like, honestly, I wish I still had the same camera. I've been going back and forth about I actually might purchase it. Every time I go into the camera store, I see like my old DSLR is sitting there. I have mirrorless now. And you're like, but I'm just like, I miss it. Even outside of just, I mean, I shoot mirrorless, but I still miss having a DSLR, period. Because it's the fundamentals for me. I value actually getting the right exposure in the camera first, versus what I see now is where I see people just cranking the dial in the mirrorless because they can see it. Which is cool. Use the camera, but no, I really just stress, keep shooting. Don't worry about, you know, anything else, anyone's opinion, and just keep going. Just keep growing.
Well, I mean, you mentioned something quite interesting earlier, and you talked about, you know, when you start off shooting, it's like you're free and there's no problems and you're really enjoying it, you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
But once you start getting clients, there's a kind of pressure that comes with that. And without realizing it, sometimes you sort of lose that freedom of creativity. And it stops being something you enjoy and are passionate about and becomes more of a job.
Yeah.
You know, did you ever go through anything like that? And if you did, how did you deal with it?
Yeah.
How did you come out of that? Or do you ever come out of that? You know?
I think you can. Like for me, I won't speak like I know it all, but yeah, I definitely did. I mean, quite recently, sometimes I flip-flop. But the word or the key to kind of get out of that is just intention. I'd say balance, but you know, to achieve balance, you got to be intentional. And it depends where you are. You know, you've got, I have a job, so I kind of balance this whole thing with work. If you're full-time creative, then yeah, you're definitely, I mean, the bulk of your day probably will be paid shoots until you establish some sort of process to where you're hitting the numbers that you need to hit to live. And then, you know, everything else. But setting the intention towards like, hey, look, I'm not, you know, I'm doing this for, you know, this is paid, but I'm intentional with the rest of my time, the rest of the day or the rest of this week, or this is my like day to myself, my creating day. I'm not taking any shoots for this day, you know. Being intentional with your time is really, really big. Again, something that 2020 has taught all of us too. So I'd say that's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about intentions, I know you mentioned earlier, I was actually going to ask, where do you see your business in the next 5 years? And I know you mentioned earlier, like, you know, you're not really concerned about, you know, getting those numbers, but more about, you know, getting to know people and getting to build a network.
Yeah.
That's what you're mostly passionate about. So I'm going to change the question a bit, and I'm going to say, again, on the topic of intentions, where do you see yourself as an individual 5 years from now?
Okay.
Either creatively or just as a normal human being. What do you hope you can achieve? Outwardly, inwardly, whatever the case, you know, where you see yourself. Where do you hope to be?
Gotcha. And I mean, again, even if you had asked it the first way, that's kind of how I look at it. Like that's how the whole thing came up, the growth concept. That's how I look at my work. Ironically, it's my initials, but just growing. I say I'd measure it by the amount of impact I've had on everyone else or my community. I see myself getting involved in bigger projects to where I can actually send a message to where, you know, I can create my own or have my work in different galleries, but, you know, getting to a bigger level. And so when I mean it, I could say scale at that point. I just don't mean towards like, no, I don't necessarily want to have a photography business and have people under me, not that, but on the impact like level, that's what I want to scale. Having a team or having a budget to where I can create a visual, or we can all create a visual that's a series on like some, you know, a TV show or Netflix, or just our own on YouTube. And similar to you, man, again, like being able to impact people, those that are like-minded creatives, anyone. And I think that's the big thing for me.
Yo, I like that. I really do. I'm a big fan of, you know, networking and having a positive impact, giving a platform to not just other creators, but just like to any individual. Because like I've seen, I mean, I talked about it earlier, I've just seen how competitive things have become. And it's really become a dog-eat-dog world. And funny enough, it's sincere. Like people just out there wanting to be on top of one another, and in their hearts, it's like you just want to survive, which is crazy. So I really like that concept, the growth concept. I really like what you have going on, and I back it 100%. I can't wait to see where it goes and how it matures and comes to life, you know. Next question is, I just lost it. Okay, yes, this is a big one. I'm gonna tell a story first before I ask it. It's that every time, I don't know if it's different in the States, But every time I tell people a quote, they don't understand why it's so expensive. You know, everybody's always like, yo, like, I don't understand why photographers are so expensive, or why can't you be cheaper, you know? And I do feel like photography in itself and videography and other things like that aren't really taken as seriously. It's like a hobby. It's like, oh, this guy's got a camera. You want him to take photos. Let's just give him a little something for his troubles. So what's one thing you wish people understood about your art, be it writing, be it photography, be it videography, whatever it is? What do you wish people understood and you could just stop explaining every single time?
Trying to figure out how I answered this one. So I'll say it's two things. For, you know, clients or those that are not creatives, just time. I wish they would apply the same logic to where, you know, if you were to take your car to the shop, you're getting an oil change and they need to check one other thing. But you don't necessarily argue when they hit you with, I don't know, a higher price than you think. And, you know, they explain it because it's hours of labor.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with our craft, whether it's photography, videography. I'll keep it on just the, you know, photography and videography though. It's just like, just because you see a kid with a camera and you ask them to come shoot an event and you tell me it's 2 hours, or say even it's an hour, they think our time creating or doing that is just that 1 or 2 hours. That's not it. It's one, it's my transportation getting there. Then it's if I have any additional setup, depending on the event, the equipment I bring to the shoot, if I have to hire someone else to come out to it. After that, I have to film I have to film and make sure I get whatever angle or shoot whatever angle for that event, take it back home, put this into my computer. These are the hours that no one sees. And this is where I see a lot of creatives sometimes sell themselves short too. A lot of them will just charge for the hour that they shot at the event and not charge at all for post-production. And then some will charge for post-production, but they'll cut it off at an hour. That's where I want a lot of photographers. And I kind of I'm like a businessman at heart too. It's not necessarily about taxing people for me, but you got to realize the value that you're bringing. So if you're shooting this event, it's an hour and you leave at an hour, cool, you're coming back home. It might take you 2 to 3 hours, especially if you're doing videography. That's overwhelming to me. But for photography, like, really quote how much time that you generally spend, especially if you're full-time. You got to have some sort of process. You know how long it's generally going to take you to do the event A. If it's a wedding, you know exactly how long it's going to take. That's, you know, it's a bigger event. That's the first part of the answer. I wish people knew how much time outside of just shooting the actual event or whatever they need it takes. And then this one kind of segues into, I feel like you might ask me about collaboration. This one goes into for everyone, and it's vulnerability. Even if it's a service related shoot, or, you know, say, you know, I'm working on a project, there's a certain amount of vulnerability that comes across with just all of our art as creatives. And I think that hinders a little bit of collaboration too, or it's a small threat or scare that people have. And I don't think everyone treats it the same. So it's like, when someone invites you to the house to show you a project or to talk to you about a project, it's like, no, I'm sharing a piece of you with me, dog. Like, this is big. And then if that person were to go share it with a lot of people, or worse, and we've seen it, take the idea or something similar and recreate it and call it inspiration, that hurts. A lot.
Sorry, that's funny, but that happens. That's literally what happens.
So, so those are the two biggest things. Though, is the amount of time that we actually put in as creatives. Just because you see me, you know, in my 20s with a camera does not mean it's not a hobby. You're paying me to shoot it. That's how you should look at it. We've passed the hobby. Like, once money is involved, we've passed the hobby level.
Yes, we have. 100%.
When I'm by myself and I'm shooting for myself, yeah, maybe I can call it a hobby because for me, it's my passion project. But no, not when you pay me. So you got to treat it like an actual job on both sides. And then the vulnerability, and that's for everyone. I think everyone needs to respect that too. I don't, because we see it. Some creatives don't respect the vulnerability.
Respect. Yeah. I've seen that. I know I giggled about it. It's so funny because it's the first time I've heard about it, but I see it all the time. I can think about 10 things on the spot, 10 incidences to me or to other people that I've seen where someone's there sharing. And I mean, we see it, it's just not talked about. So it's the first time I've actually heard someone come up and say it, that it's something that needs to be understood, probably something that needs to be addressed as well.
Exactly.
On that topic of like addressing things, I mean, you mentioned something on your website. I think it should be a quote by you. It says, if I can plant one seed of information a day, one seed of inspiration a day, I'd say my goal is met. And I found that to be very, very powerful. And I think personally for yourself, or just generally as a creative community, how do you think we can better inspire or plant that seed, in one another? Because I feel like it's lacking a lot. Like, we've got less people trying to help and just more people trying to suck out, So how are you doing that? And maybe we can also pick a cherry or two from your tree, do something similar.
I mean, I think we can do that better by starting with ourselves. It sounds very, very simple, but starting with yourself, if you were to really sit back and look at half of the stuff that we see on Instagram or, especially Twitter, just everyone's opinion on something. And it's good. You see a lot of people trying to inspire others and motivate others, but I don't, some people are trying to pour from an empty cup. And I'm saying this because I was one of those people too. But you have to get to a level where you can actually inspire yourself, consistently. And you're just at a good space. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you can start working towards, a true impact and inspiring others. So when I said, if I can plant a seed of inspiration, just one seed of inspiration a day, I'd say my goal is met. That's on both sides. I'd love to talk to and inspire people. That's another part of the growth concept as well, is just helping, those that don't think they can do and grow. But the other piece is when I say plant a seed, you can plant a seed and no one will ever see it. But it's the fact that you've planted it, and that's why starting with yourself, really inspire yourself. Look up within photography or within anything, so find stuff that inspires you and moves you, and do that. Let it move you to do whatever you need to do to get to that point. And I think over the course of time, when you get comfortable with yourself, you get comfortable with inspiring yourself daily, whether it's watching a motivational video or, whatever, you find what it is for you, then that cup will overflow into your community, other creatives. And that's kind of how I do it. And mine goes back and forth too. So with this year, I had to do it. I had to focus internally and try and plant those seeds for myself that no one sees, just to keep going.
Damn.
And eventually it goes back outward to everyone else.
It's very important to mention trying to fill others on an empty cup. That just doesn't work.
So you don't find out until you're just
and I can definitely see myself, in a lot of times doing that without even realizing it. But you also mentioned that you got to inspire yourself. You got to fill yourself up. You got to fill your cup somehow.
Right.
And how do you do that? How do you find the energy and motivation to get up every day and do this photography thing? What's your inspiration?
Right. But was that another question? My bad.
Yeah, that was another question.
Yeah,
how do you do that? No, it's cool.
So lately, so what I do, I'm really I kind of like set different routines lately, as far as like if I'm keeping it with just photography, that's just part of my meditation.
Wow.
And I had to do it. I kind of came out of being like fully transparent. These past couple months have been really, really rough for me. So just refinding that peace for me. So I actually go on photo walks for meditation.
Wow.
It's just me by myself. It's a little tougher now because it's cold, but that's one way I implement it. I write a lot, so I write poetry, journaling, just finding those things that like I've just been exploring myself. I think 2020 is a lot of people to do that. Finding things that allow you to express and, kind of push things out so you don't just hold them in. Yeah. I think that's the big thing. So, and then that's what allows you to keep going every day. Like prior to that, when I wasn't necessarily doing photo walks, or journaling, no, it was tough. Outside of paid shoots. Yeah. So that's how you get into that like cycle of no, I'm not creating for myself. I'm not journaling. I'm not doing anything intentionally for me or planting any seeds in me, but I'm still doing these paid shoots for, photography or whatever it is. And you're left feeling, I don't know, frustrated, irritated that you're giving time to something else, but it's not you. So that's why I said you got to start with yourself.
And would you recommend, sometimes just taking a break, off these paid shoots, off these paid jobs, just to focus on yourself a little bit? And, exactly. Because I know I went through a situation like that sometime this year. It was like, I didn't understand why, every shoot was so difficult. I was struggling to edit. I'm like, I've been editing for a while now. Why is it that this photo is not coming out? And I got super frustrated. And I couldn't understand why. And it was just like short of ideas and concepts. And I realized it's a creative block. I was like, what? This is what that is. So I literally took time. I took a month out, just an entire month out, no creating, no content, no paid gigs. And when I came back, it was pretty nice because during that month was sort of like self-focus. Kind of filling that cup again, which is really nice. Which is really nice to do.
Yeah, like that's it. I think that's you could probably equate that to that. Whenever you hit those moments of maybe creative block where you just like, I don't know, you just have a moment. Maybe just look at your cup and it's like, is my cup empty? Is it half full? Like, am I running low? So just check on yourself internally, and then, you can stop those paid shoots. Obviously, if you're at a place where you can, and that's where like, I don't know, a little bit of the business stuff kind of comes in for me, or just processes to where it's just how you move. Like, look, I'll shoot up to this point if you're full-time, or if you're balancing it with a job, have yourself a cushion to where if you need to take a break, then you can take a break, because that's real. And we don't talk about mental health enough. So
yeah, that's so true, man. That is so true. It's been a really nice interview and a really nice sit down. I just have one more question, because I did promise to only take about 30 or 40 minutes of your time, and I like to stick to my word. But the last question is on your company, the growth concept and Chill. I know nothing of it other than what's on the growth concept website. So can you share a little bit more about that, when it started, what it's all about, where it's going, and the mashup with Edit and Chill?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't even know. The growth concept came about like a couple years ago, just as I'll call it a portfolio. I don't even really want to call it a brand, but that's just how I looked at my work. That's really how it came about. I couldn't stick to one type of photography. I was shooting weddings. I was shooting everything I love though. Weddings, cars, real estate, land, everything. And I couldn't just stick to one. So I was like, okay, no, I'm just going to make this, I don't know. I think this is kind of like a concept of growth. And I was like, okay, the growth concept, we'll just call it that. Very, very general, broad, but as an artist or as a creative, that's how I see it. And I think that's probably the easiest way you can identify it. I mean, outside of that, the only other reason I titled it the growth concept was, I felt like a lot of my clients or the people that I shot with, I found them through, stuff that they're already doing. I found one young girl that was doing like makeup. She was really, really good at it. Like she did designs and everything like that. But the common theme was just like these people didn't necessarily believe in, putting out their work. I don't want to say themselves, but they didn't think it could like blow up or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, I would always find a lot of clients like that where it's like, no, let me show you my perspective of what this looks like. And it's cool whenever their eyes light up and it's like, no, I really did do that. Like, this is dope.
Wow.
And I'm kind of like the voice echoing. It's like, yeah, no, you're amazing. Keep going, keep growing.
Which is that planting the seed thing you're talking about.
Exactly. That's kind of how I look at every single shoot.
That's dope.
So yeah, that's how that came about. And then Edit and Chill. So last year, came about last year prior to the pandemic. I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina. That kind of came about, I know we talked about collaboration, but it was based off kind of how I was feeling a little bit with trying to reach out to different photographers or creatives and not necessarily, I don't want to say like, not necessarily feeling like that creative like vibe really, you know what I'm saying? It was kind of self-centered or more on like an independent level, which is fine. I don't want it to come off as like, oh, this kid's hurt because no one wants to collab with him. That wasn't it. It's more so kind of creating an environment that allows people to meet, and it's a difference too. So, and I made sure I sat on that before I created Edit and Chill too. But it's basically, it was an event. Now it's virtual and we've kind of turned it into so much more, but it was an event at a brand called Social Status. In the back, they've got a spot called Be Social, and I would host it every single month. There'd be free wine, free food, to where creatives all across Charlotte would come in, and it was based on sharing, various ideas and talking about, all right, well, what do you do? And letting people know like, hey, no, this person is in Charlotte. You can hit them up if you need them for wardrobe or they write. So everyone was kind of there and creating projects, sharing knowledge freely, not teaching out of fear. I think that's another thing that gets lost too.
Wow, that is dope. I love the concept. When I heard about it and I saw it initially on the interview, I was like, this doesn't come up on his like bio or his, so I had to ask about it. Yeah. And now that I know what it is, it's a pretty sick concept. I mean, it's probably had been difficult trying to do it during this year, right?
Yeah, it's been. Since like after COVID hit, it was a little tough. I mean, we knew we had to go virtual, but it's a lot more. Yeah, it's a lot more moving parts behind the scenes with a budget, stuff like that. And it's definitely, you're right. It's not the same quality wise. You got to do a lot of pre-recorded stuff. So we're moving just a little bit slower than we were prior to the pandemic.
Now, definitely pray that you do keep moving and hopefully you can come out of this situation sooner rather than later and have things back to normal.
Of course.
But from my end, it's a big thank you, honestly, for this time. It's been really awesome. It's really amazing. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man.
I learned a lot. I learned so much more than I thought I would, which is really cool. And I hope that a lot of people who watch this can be inspired as well, and that a seed can be planted in them as well.
Yes, sir.
Through this conversation. Yeah, I do hope we can meet sometime, God willing, somewhere, somehow. Things happen. We can meet, connect, collaborate, or whatever.
Of course.
But we'll definitely stay in touch. And I wish you all the best.
Will do, man. I appreciate you as always. This is awesome.
Thanks, man.